Well, round 3. So I got a lot of stuff to do. I don't know that I've got a lot of things I'm gonna get finished, but I got to start working on the hydraulics. We've got a ton of air lines to pull. Got to work on the transmission. I think the next thing I'm going to do, today's Sunday, I'm going to spend today, I'm going to try to get gauges in the dash. I still have yet to ever have an oil pressure gauge hooked up on this engine. I would like to see if it's got any oil pressure. I might work on some electrical stuff, put a key in it, whatnot. This is going to be, it's going to have a key, like, so somebody can't steal it. Not that, you know, something like this I can have running within 30 seconds without having a key in it. But it's going to have this that goes in the dash that is actually the off-on start switch. It has the same one back there on the console. But I think that's the project for the day. I got one in. I'm using Strataflex. I've heard this. Strataflex is a brand. R5 air, DOT line. I'm using this stuff everywhere that the line may sort of move, like to the engine, and also all the places it'll sort of be exposed. You'll be able to see it. That's what that is. All the long runs, like under the dash and, you know, in the frame and stuff, I'm just using that plastic DOT line. So let's do something. On Cummins, right down here, these several pipe plugs are the main oil galley. I heard somebody argue the other day if this is a galley or a gallery. I've always heard it called a galley. So I'm trying to figure out how to route this hose to keep it out of the way the best I can of that changing the oil filter. I actually think I've decided what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn this back around. And point it backwards. Well, so just run that out a hole there. I think I can snake it over, maybe tie it up to the radiator, or just let it kind of dangle across here. Right here under the exhaust is the only real good place I see to put the temperature sending unit. Alright, I'm fixing to start electricaling. I've got these hoses from the back are all laid out pretty good. I've got a little bit of extra slack here. I'm going to start taping stuff together. Obviously when I'm done I may tape a whole bunch of it together. But I'm going to start trying to get it organized. I'm going to take a piece of number 10 and go from this battery stud up into the cab. We've got to have a wire come back for the start, run. We'll eventually have one that goes. I need a backup. Let me back up and I want to tell you exactly kind of the end plan here. So I want to give you a quick layout, a quick dirty rough layout of how everything's going to sort of lay out, so you'll have a little bit better idea of some of the real things I'm doing and why I'm doing them. To start off with, we got a couple air valves in the truck. One of them is going to be run an air cylinder that runs a right angle drive that kicks the drawworks in and the rear axle's out, so the drive shaft turns the drawworks, not the rear ends, or vice versa. You'll be able to, you know, it from in here. There'll be another valve that kills the air to the driller console, and there's a reason for this other than just to make everything back there inoperable, and we'll explain that when we get there. It's a little bit complicated to explain without seeing it. But anyway, we got a valve up here that switches from drill to drive mode as far as the right angle drive, and then also one just pneumatically. The next thing is we're going to have a mud pump. We got to have drilling pits somewhere, however we decide to set them up, and a mud pump. And that mud pump's going to have a diesel engine on it of some kind, and I want to be able to start and kill that engine from the driller's console. I want to keep the batteries charged on it, and I want to monitor oil pressure and water temperature. So off of this imaginary mud pump that's sitting right here, we're going to have a cable that comes off that thing with a 7-way trailer light plug that's going to come up here and plug in to the side of this, or down here, or something, whatever works out. We'll have enough wires that our center 2 gauges there, we can measure oil pressure and water temperature, and we'll have a switch there, start and kill. We're going to have another similar cable, actually exactly the same cable, but it does something different, that comes down off the console and goes to the truck engine, and it's going to give us all our other gauges up there: water temperature, oil pressure, and voltage. And also we'll be able to start and kill it, and that cable will run along the frame la-di-da, and come up here in the cab, and it'll connect to an oil pressure sending unit like this, and a water temperature sending unit that's probably still in the office, and hooked up the back of the ignition switch so that you can start and kill this engine from back there. One of the things I plan on doing is we're going to have a relatively heavy wire in that 7-way cable, like a piece of number 10, that goes down in the cable, pops up in the driller's console. Well, there'll be 2 of them, plus and a minus. Pop up in the driller's console, have got some kind of a fuse system, we'll put a circuit breaker or something back here, whatever, and then come out to the mud pump. So the mud pump itself won't have an alternator. Batteries on the mud pump will be charged through all this from the alternator that's on the truck. Now, that being said, I'm going to start straightening these out. I'm going to take a piece of number 10. We're going to come off here, run up into the cab. I'm going to start sort of taping and wadding all this stuff up. I think the 2 air lines that go to the brake, to the foot valve, maybe a little bit too long. We can fix that when we get there. But we got to have a power supply, a crank wire, a run wire. We're going to have a wire for the oil pressure sending unit, and then the water temp gauge will have to go up there. The water temp sending unit will probably just piggyback onto our little capillary tube or something. Alright, I went and grabbed a spool of this 7-way trailer wire. I'm going to show you. Looks like that. It's got 2 10s, a 12, and 4 14s or something. Also, I took a piece of Strataflex and ran 4 wires to it. I got a 10 and 3 14s, I think. That'll keep those wires nice and just so they can't rub on anything. Obviously, this number 10 is going to be hooked straight to the battery, and if it was to short, you would have a problem. My camera's about dead. I'm going to go plug you in. In the meanwhile, I'm going to take and run. So I got hoses everywhere. I need to run a piece of this, 2 1/4-inch air lines that's going to go to our right angle drive cylinder. And then we got a 3/8 air line that's got to go all the way to the back. It's straightened out there. And a 3/8 air line that's going to come from up there and feed air to the transmission. And I'm going to spend some time here. There's not any way I can video doing this. I'm going to get all these drug in here. And I think I'm not going to cut that wire. I'm just going to have a whole big spool of it here, and I'm going to drag it all the back through there later, at a later date. But I'm going to get all these wires and hoses laid in here, start taping and bundling them together and kind of organized, and then we can I'll pick you back up here in a few minutes, in a few seconds for you, I guess, and we'll start hooking stuff up. Okie dokie. Let's see here. So I got this stuff kind of taped together. This is not how this is going to be at the end. I'm going to tie this up and everything in the frame, but it's sort of bundled together so it runs smoothly. It's all the right length. I've got my 3 wires here, start, run, and oil pressure gauge. And this piece of number 10 will go directly to the battery. It all pops out in here. Here's the cord that's going to the back. Okay, so I've got this main wire here that comes from the battery. It's going to loop through and power these 2 breakers and this light switch. I don't know if I'm going to put lights on this. I may put headlights on it. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to put tail lights or anything. I just don't think I need them. But this battery wire is going to power these 3 things. This 40 amp breaker, this is a 40 amp breaker. Now the output of it is going to go to this cable, and this wire and cable is going to loop to the back and then piggyback off and go straight to the mud pump. The only purpose of this wire is to charge the mud pump. I'm also going to come off this thing, this 40 amp breaker, with a piece of wire and snake down and go to the alternator. So if the alternator shorts out or the alternator wire shorts out, it will trip this 40 amp breaker and not catch something on fire. This 8 amp breaker is going to come out of it, and it's going to go into this key switch mounted here, and this key switch is going to loop over and power the ignition switch, and also an ignition wire in this cable that's going to power another one of these switches at the back. So that way, if you turn the key on and pull the key out of it, you can't start the rig back there. You can't have some kid come up here and just fire the rig up. Obviously, if somebody wants to steal this thing and you got half a brain, you could have one of these engines running literally in a few seconds. I don't think the key does much good. So I'm going to put you down here and start piecing some wires together.
Okay, so it took forever. So we got power coming in. Jumping over here through the switch, through this ignition switch, and then this is going to go to the battery terminal of our ignition switch. Our ignition will be this wire. And it starts the blue one. Okay, for my reference down the road, black is power, blue is start, red is run. Okay, and then we got our last unfused wire here that goes to the light switch. Now I gotta get a Phillips. Alright, then we got 3 wires left here. One will be oil pressure, one will be water temperature, and then I guess there'll be a spare.
A piece of number 8 here. This is high temperature wire. I'm gonna go ahead and hook it up. This is the wire that's going to go to the alternator. We don't have an alternator yet, but I'm going to go ahead and hook it up so I don't have to crawl up under the dash or whatever later. You got to remember this thing's 24 volts, so all the current that's going to go through everything is half that of a normal vehicle. You know, it's only a 35 amp alternator, you know, whatever. So next thing I got to do is I got to set the bucket seat in here, the actual bucket seat, and drill some holes. I got to drill holes for the breakers, and let's see, we already got these 2 switch holes in there. You know, I forgot something else. I got to put 2 more pieces of wire. We got to piggyback both our low air light and the Hauer meter. Tell you what, boys, them right there, them worth about 50 horsepower. Next thing I got to do is hook these wires up here, and this thing will be ready to start. Instead of using this big post, there's a little jumper wire, and I've already taken loose. I'm just going to put this main battery wire onto it. Okay, I'm going to turn the key on. Hopefully nothing blows up. The key was already on. And there should be one of these wires hot. I guess it's that one. So this hot wire now, this one is the one that should go to the ignition. Let me tie a knot in it. I just flipped my camera off. I got to put an end on it, and it's going right up there on that. Right there. Next thing is we got to figure out which one of these is the actual crank wire. And so I think I'm just going to trial and error since there's only 2. Let's see if it's that one. I say it is that one. Okay, and then this last wire will go to our oil pressure sensor that goes to the gauge that's in the console. So this thing's ready to start. I'm curious to see if it's got any oil pressure. All right, firing the whole shop. I got nervous for a second there. So I worked really hard to keep sand out of this transmission, and we had a tarp and a rag sit here with a big heavy weight. Had that thing sitting on top of it. I think I did a pretty good job, but I have decided that probably the smartest thing to do is I'm going to buzz these bolts out of here, pull this top off, and then I'm going to dump it. Had some sludgy crap in the bottom. I'm going to dump some used motor oil in it, crank it up, put it in high gear, run it for a little while, get it all stirred up and drain it, and then we'll put good oil in it. I think one good flush will be good to go. So if you're interested, these collars slide back and forth, and this is what changes the ratios. This front collar forward would be direct. It would have the output shaft hooked directly to this gear. This gear is made to the input shaft, so that would be 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and back would be reverse. And we got a 2-speed back half here, so in low range, its low range is 1 ratio lower than first gear. So you go low 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and flip this to direct and start back over in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Gives you 10 forward gears. I guess I'm gonna crank it up and let it run a while, and if anything spectacular happens, I'll pick the camera up. It's been running for probably half hour. It's all up to temperature, thermostat open. It's running about 175, 180. I got the my vice grips hung off the fuel pump so that it's riveting it up to about 1200. Everything looks good. I idled it down. It's got 35 pounds of oil pressure to idle. It's definitely low on oil. The oil pressure gauge is moving around. It's got, I'm not worried about it hurting right now, but anyway, I'm sure pleased with it. Let's drain the oil out of this thing. I have to use my seat here. Alright, I'm filling her up with 140 weight. 90 weight is for people that like to get good gas mileage. I like 140 weight and bigger fuel tanks personally. So this shift tire here was full of sand. It was just laying on the ground. I spent at least 20 minutes like, there's just still, God dang, I didn't get that there either. I have blown and carburetor cleanered and everything else. I guess I'm gonna have to call it good. Alright, I'm done. I'm going home. 6:30. Okay, so I've worked a couple of days off camera on this thing. It was not worth videoing. I spent one entire day doing nothing but running lines from the front to the back. It's just such a nightmare to get up and over and everything. And I've got some of them run up here. This is what it's going to look like eventually, is that they come up over the frame here, and then, you know, this is too loose, but they're going to be shoved up inside this channel and come out in the console. And I think I might take a piece of plate, put a couple of bolts in it, just kind of cover this. But I wanted these to be all sort of protected. I got most of the airlines ran. All this stuff goes to the front. There's 2 hydraulic lines. I bought some giant zip ties. Anyway, I've been zip tying this stuff. There's 2 hydraulic hoses that run up to the front here. We're going to, in short order, maybe not in this video, we're going to put a big giant cylinder on the front of this rig so that we build a substructure and back the rig up on the sub. We can just pick the front of the rig up, and we may need to have the front tires as high as, you know, 18 or 20 inches off the ground. Anyway, that's what those hoses are for. Let's go in the office here. So I bought the absolute cheapest 65 amp, I guess that's what that means, 65 something, plasma cutter. 300 bucks off Amazon. We got a few more things. Talk about hydraulic hose. This is going to be the hydraulic return hose. It's 1.5 inches, probably bigger than I need, but I've decided that's what I'm going to use. Let me drag this crap out the door. Okay, I'm fixing to start working on some hydraulic stuff here. I got to put a bunch of fittings in this tank. Originally this rig didn't have any kind of hydraulic filter, and that generally turns out about how you think it would. We're going to put a suction screen in right here. Basically this, we got to drop this in the tank. We're going to have this nipple poking out through here, put a valve. This will be the suction. This will be the suction. It'll come out of that and into this pump. Now this pump here is not going to be the pump that I use in the end, but this pump is here. It's got a drive shaft, it's hooked up, and I'm going to use it for now. I'm about 99% decided that I'm going to do a hydraulic top drive, and so I'm going to need a pretty substantial hydraulic pump. Anyway, we got to put a suction filter right there. I have got a return filter. This goes on top. There's a lot more to it, but this is what bolts down. It's got to go on the other side over there, and so the fluid comes in here, and then there's a filter that hangs in the tank. I'm going to weld a couple of 1/2-inch bungs in here for a sight glass, and then also a couple over there. We may need a case drain or something for the top drive. There'll be a smaller return line that's not filtered, and then we'll probably have to have a hydraulic cooler. I thought about mounting a cooler up right up there. We'll need a return for the cooler. Anyway, got a new plasma cutter. See if it works. Yep. I don't think I showed you, but there's a lip on this thing and an O-ring, and this has got to fit down in there, and that O-ring's what seals to the tank. I got a rock here, and clean this up a little bit. Yep, there's your bead. So I just realized there's a baffle in there, and I'm not going to be able to get that filter thing over there. There's a baffle here, here, and here. There's 3. It's kind of unusual. So the day goes on. It got real windy today. I got a couple more bungs welded in. I had to drop a piece of plate I hacked out, welded and put our little screen filter in here, wiped that tank out good as I could. I got that sort of done. That's the majority of what I've done. I got the grill took off of it. I'm going to spray that grill thing white. It's pretty beat up, but I think it'll look cool if this is white. The next thing I'm going to do, the next thing I'm going to do is, this looks really ugly and I don't like it. I know this shouldn't bother me, but this the way this rust has pushed this off, I think I'm going to take a piece of flat bar and drop in here, notch it out with this tubing, and weld it out so it won't get water behind it, and that's going to make that's going to look a whole lot better than that. Anyway, I'm going to get that done. After I get that done, I'm done for the day. This is Thursday, but I'm going to do that tomorrow. I want to do some painting. I want to get the cab painted orange, the outside of it, and I'd like to get this tank painted. I want to get this tank painted so I can put my filter and stuff on here and there not be paint on it. I'm just kind of wanting to paint up part of this. My next step, you know, I've got a bunch of hoses pulled through the frame, and I'd like to get it just enough working so that we could get a throttle and some hydraulics, and I'd like to stand this thing up. I guess I gotta put jacks on it and stuff before I can set it up, but anyway, get it stood up and we can pull the guards off here, and I'd like to get this thing sandblasted basically from here to there, and I guess the frame all the way, and then I'll be able to finish painting it. We can, you know, put the paint everywhere. I'm done for this video. I'm gonna get that front little piece sort of cut out and fit in there, and then I'm gonna come up here tomorrow and weld it out, and then I'm gonna spend the weekend, at least this weekend, maybe a part of next week, painting on this thing. Try to get the front third of it or whatever painted. Anyway, I'm done rattling. Appreciate you watching. Catch you on the next one.